Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Wind Waker Unflooded. We've been getting a lot of new viewers lately, and I wanted to just kind of take the time to answer some frequently asked questions, address some things that I've been seeing in y'all's comments from some of these new viewers, and just talk about the project and make sure that, and if you have more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments to this video. I read most of the comments, so I'll see if I can reply to them. But there are some things that I've seen that I wanted to go ahead and address. These questions have been compiled actually by a contributor to the project, Topeka, who worked on the merchant ship that you may remember from an earlier video. Topeka's been working on a lot of new stuff as well that I'm very excited to show off, hopefully soon. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into these questions. What is the project? Basic overview and inspirations. All right, this is a good one. So if y'all don't know, Wind Waker Unflooded is a 3D modeling fan art project where I am reimagining the Kingdom of Hyrule within the world and art style of The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. Of course, if you played The Wind Waker, you know that the islands of the Great Sea are actually the mountaintops of Hyrule, but we never get to really explore Hyrule in the game. We just see a small portion of it around Hyrule Castle. So this project is all about bringing that world that we never really got to see to life, that world that we know is down there below the ocean that we just never really get to see. And just trying to imagine how does the world of Hyrule connect to the islands that we do see. And just it's been a creative project, just kind of really fully realizing that world. And I know that I don't know. I've talked before about like why I'm doing the project and what inspires it. And it's just because Wind Waker is a game about exploration, and but that's a world that you don't get to explore. We're told it's there, but we don't get to explore its version of Hyrule. It's just kind of it's so tantalizing. And so this project is just all about just like fully realizing that desire within the beautiful art style, the unique art style of the Wind Waker. We've never seen Hyrule in the art style of the Wind Waker, and it's my favorite Zelda art style. So that's what's fueling the project. That's what it's about. Welcome aboard, all new viewers. Ooh, here we go. Why isn't the Temple of Time under Hyrule Castle? You're asking the hard questions, Topeka. Okay, we got to talk about the Temple of Time if there's anyone that has questions about it. So, if you've been following the project, you know that we're doing Hyrule Castle Town, and a part of this new Hyrule Castle Town in the world of the Wind Waker. To be clear, timeline-wise, I'm modeling the world right before the Great Flood. This is Hyrule, during the prologue to the Wind Waker. During the events leading up to it before the Great Flood. That's the world that I'm modeling. That's my timeline. So part of the new Hyrule Castle Town that I'm modeling, a part of it is the Temple of Time, modeled in my project by contributor CallumsArmy. And so you can see the Temple of Time outside of Hyrule Castle. And I know that during the in-game events of the Wind Waker, its version of Hyrule Castle is kind of presented as the Temple of Time. The castle itself functions as the Temple of Time. It houses the Master Sword. It has this chamber of sages where we see their portraits along stained glass windows. The Master Sword itself freezes time, and on a pedestal, hidden within Hyrule Castle itself. So it's like the Hyrule Castle kind of functions as the Temple of Time. Its interior architecture is built like a cathedral in a way, as many castles are, because of course, like monarchs wanted to be seen as gods. So there's a that the castle architecture often mirrors church architecture and vice versa. Just historically. But anyway, just like with that question, so why is there a separate Temple of Time? And there's a couple of answers to that. Because it's a fairly common theory to say that Wind Waker's Hyrule Castle was built on top of the Temple of Time. Of course, in the adult timeline of Ocarina of Time, Castle Town is destroyed, Hyrule Castle is destroyed, and ultimately Ganon's Tower that was built over Hyrule Castle is destroyed. So what would resume would be this huge building project where they would rebuild the Castle Town and the castle itself. But the Temple of Time was still preserved. So there's the theory that the new Hyrule Castle of Wind Waker was built over Ocarina of Time's Temple of Time. That's a theory. I don't really have an issue with that theory. Within my lore brain, it kind of makes sense to say that, oh, well, Ganon's Tower was kind of over this lava pit, in this kind of basin there. Maybe that, was excavated and became the basis for the lake that we see in the Wind Waker. I don't know. That's just kind of what makes sense to me based on the geography of the world. It doesn't really matter to me either way, but I guess, let's say that Hyrule Castle, the new Hyrule Castle of Wind Waker, was built on Ocarina of Time's Temple of Time. The Castle Town civilians would still want a Temple of Time, right? They would still want a place to pray, recognize the goddesses. Like, they still need a church in the city. So, like, is the Temple of Time that we see in Wind Waker Unflooded in my project, is that going to be the same version as the one in Ocarina of Time? It's meant to be, but it very well may be a new building modeled after the old building. Whatever makes sense to you theory wise. Like, I know we're getting into the weeds here with these theories, but it's a good question worth asking. And I think there's a couple of ways that you could answer it. Either way, functionally, I think the city, it makes sense to have its its own church that is separate from the castle for the common folk. So anyway, how can models and contributions be added to the project? So I love, like I said, like I've loved how many contributions the project's gotten. It's like I can't do this alone. I'm just not talented enough. So feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to email me at windwakerhyrule@gmail.com. I think I have my email listed in the about section of my YouTube page as well, or in the bio, I think. So check that. Feel free to or leave a comment down below or get in touch with me. Any way that you can, you know, you can find me, reach out, and I'd love to talk to you and talk about how you can contribute, and kind of work through and figure out what you can work on without stepping on people's toes. So let me know what you're interested in. I want to make sure that everyone who's contributing is contributing stuff that they're interested in contributing. I don't tell people what to work on, but so if there's something that you're interested in the map, and I haven't worked on it yet, I'll let you make it. You know what I'm saying? So we can arrange that and figure that out. I also have a Discord server where we can talk about contributions as well and give more direct feedback to the project. That's a way that if you want to have like a conversation with me, that's an easier way to reach me. I respond to YouTube comments usually, and I see them. So if you leave feedback through YouTube, like I still see your comments, but Discord's a way to have a more active conversation with me about the project. So I'll make sure to remind me if I don't remember, but I'll post a link to my Discord server in the community page for this channel after this video's out. So remind me if I don't, and I'll make sure to repost a link. I don't keep like a permanent link open just because like if it gets too many people, I want to make sure that I can monitor it and make sure things don't get out of hand, make sure things stay respectful. So I don't want the server to get too big. So I don't keep an open link where just anyone can join. I reopen the link, every now and then. So feel free to join during this opening. Pop in while you still can before the link closes down. So anyway, what are my goals for the project? Great question, Topeka. Thank you. So my goals for the project, this is a 3D modeling project. The goal of this project is to create a model, a map of the world, a complete map of the overworld, with kind of invisible borders, right? Where you can kind of be anywhere and look out into the distance and feel like the map keeps on going. Even though it won't, there will be borders to the map, but like that's the goal. And I'll be done when the map's done. I know there's a lot of people in the comments that want this to be a mod or a ROM hack or a fan game. They use those words, and I'm not a game developer. Like if someone wants to, if someone else wants to make that, that's a separate project. That's not really within my wheelhouse. I'm making the model here. I'm making the map itself. And I'll be done basically when the map's done. And I would love to collaborate with someone and talk about ideas for what would happen if this project was playable. I have thoughts on that, but that's not really what I'm working on right now. I know that there's a lot of people that want that, but I think that that's worth saying. My approach is as a filmmaker. That's my background. I'd love to make short films kind of set within this map, kind of in the style of Wind Waker cutscenes, where you can kind of see some more of the story of that prologue. I am a writer. Like I said, my background's in filmmaking and short films and writing scripts. So I'd love to kind of like write scripts and kind of show you the story of that world through a short film, through an animated short film. So those are my goals. Those are things I'd like to do. And that's the kind of the current scope of which I'm approaching the project. What are the current locations and models planned for the future? Good question. There's a lot of things left to model. Oh man, there's so many things I want to add to the project and keep working on. There's some things y'all know, right? Like I'm going to keep working on Hyrule Castletown. I'm going to keep working on like Tingle Land, right? That's a theme park in progress. Locations I might not have talked about are like sage temples, right? In the Wind Waker game itself, we only see 2 sage temples. Those are the only 2 like surviving ones, or the only 2 with access like above water, right? So I think there would be more temples below the ocean. And to be clear, right, like there are sage temples in Ocarina of Time, but to me, like what is a sage temple in Wind Waker are places where the sages go to pray, right? It has a specific function there, with this being a place of prayer for the sage. And it may be more than that. It may serve a functional purpose. Um, there may even be enemies to fight off still in the temples there, but it is a place where the sage goes to pray, and channel their power. That's the idea of a sage temple to me within the context of the Wind Waker's sage temples, like the Earth and Wind Temple, right? So I want to build more of those locations, right? A place for the Fire Sage, a place for the Shadow Sage, etc. And that would be different from the Ocarina of Time locations. Like those places are functionally a forest temple and a fire temple, but I don't see its fire temple as being like the fire temple. It's game fire temple, and that could be a recurring location, but it wouldn't serve as a fire temple for a future sage. If that all makes sense, let me know if y'all have questions about that, and I can re-explain kind of my viewpoint on how sage temples work. But I think that makes sense. I mean, there's several games that have a forest temple, right, using those specific words, like Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, but those aren't the same location. They're both a forest temple, but they're not the forest temple. You know what I'm saying? I think that makes sense. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the Wind Waker Unflooded story? So like I said, like I would totally be interested in making short films set within that world. And the story that I tell, I think it would be, of course, about, it would be about like why the kingdom falls. Why would things get so dire that flooding is the only option? Where did the flood come from? And I think there would be a conversation about divine intervention and how gods work, right? Because I'm a religious man, myself. My faith is important to me, and thinking about just like the way that God works. God can work through miracles. He can answer prayers in miraculous ways, but he can also work through ways that seem mundane, right? That seem natural. God works in all ways, right? Even ways that don't seem miraculous. The hand of God is still a part of that, and I think that there could be a story there about like how Hyrule falls, how it condemns itself, as a result of its pride, its hubris. I don't know, like I think like ocean level, for instance, like we see the world flooded. I think that could like legitimately be because Hyrule was built below sea level and it has its own sea, right? That maybe leads up to like a dam, right, in the distance, right? This whole time they've been damming the ocean, which could be the ultimate act of hubris, for instance. These are ideas I have. I don't know. I mean, there's so much I want to do there, of course, with the rise of Ganondorf and how this kingdom could be divided, like how these factions that are supposed to be unified turn against each other and these borders get tighter and tighter. And, just like this threat of war keeps rising, with a kingdom that's supposed to be unified, that is trying to unify itself in the wake of Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf's defeat, and when Ganondorf returns again before the events of the Wind Waker, they're not able to function. The kingdom is not able to protect itself. And, we're told that it's because the hero in green did not appear, but saying something that, like, there's so many ways to ward off war, and the fact that it came down to just, like, if only a hero could be here, if only there was some savior, some messiah could show up, and that's all the hope that they had left. And when a hero did not appear, I mean, they doomed themselves. So I don't know. Like, there's so many ideas I have about the way to tell that story and all of its drama. But stay tuned to the channel and maybe you'll see it play out. So, yeah, here's this last question. I've already addressed this, but yeah, will Wind Waker Unflooded be a ROM hack or a fan game? I don't have the power to make that possible. That's not what I'm making on my channel. I'm showing off videos of the modeling progress. That's what I'm doing, and that's all I'm doing on this channel. So, what have you learned and improved with throughout the project's lifespan? Really good question. There's so much that I've learned that I've gotten better at, and there's so much that I'm still learning. Wind Waker has so many textures, and I'm still learning what's possible with them and how they connect, because there's so many textures that go together, like puzzle pieces, right? And so I'm still learning like how they're connected differently in the game, and I need to replay the game just to re-examine its models and have an excuse to replay the game. I haven't played it in like over a year, and I feel like I'm losing my Wind Waker edge. I need to be able to know its environment by heart and make sure I have all the story and the game text in my head as I'm modeling, because I need to be able to make lore decisions and have a make sure I have the right perspective on the world, and the way that things are meant to connect. But anyway, there's so much I've learned. Just I become a better modeler throughout this whole process. I feel like I've become a more intentful modeler, because you can make a quick environment. Like you can put a couple things together. Zigzag, zigzag. Use the sculpt tool, really put something together. But the style of Wind Waker's geometry is so intentful. It doesn't have this round like edge there that's just like, randomly sculpted. Its terrain is so much about guiding the player through a specific journey, and it can be open. You can have options there, but like it's very intentful about how to explore it. And so there have been so many lessons just on how to create an intentfully created overworld, and I'm still learning lessons about that. Just because, like, back in Wind Waker, there wasn't climbing, right? Like in Breath of the Wild, it can have rounded edges, and I feel like its terrain, like, it's still very much intentfully sculpted, but there are curves, and like I feel like that's easier terrain to create, like in a rush, for instance. But Wind Waker has those jagged, stepped edges, and you can't climb anywhere, so you have to think about how can you walk places, right? I mean, like, you can climb up a ledge, but, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just climb up the side of a cliff like you can in later games. So it's just the world design is different because of that, and this project has been such a lesson in studying the Wind Waker's map design, and I've learned so much. And I don't know, like, I feel like I should do a video just on analyzing it, but other people have. But I don't know, like, I'd love to keep talking about about that, because there's just so much that is just masterfully created in that original game, because it's simple and it's low poly, but they do so much with so little just because it's smart. So I don't know. Anyway, like, I could keep rambling about that, but I think this video is about done. Like I said, let me know if you have any other questions about the project or about me. Like I said, I'm a filmmaker, and if you want to see any of the stuff that I do, links in the description to my other channels. If you want to see some of my short films that I make, I'm making more all the time, and I want to make sure that I hype up my other projects on this channel as well. So thank you all for watching. Without further ado, I'll let you go.